Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. And welcome back. I hope your week is unfolding beautifully and you're accomplishing all the things you set your mind to, because today we've got business to attend to. And we'll go through a quick preview and then zoom in for further detail to see what is out there. But big headline out of the Supreme Court today, of course, a new order has come down, a victory for the Department of Defense. And this involves the ban that makes the left go bananas, involving the case of Emily, in quotations, Schilling, who was suing the DOD saying you got to reverse the ban on the trans coming into the military. A very short order that came down from the Supreme Court, but there was a bunch that led to this. So we'll go through it and get the details on what happened. But this was the final reply from the Trump administration. D. John Sauer sent this one in before SCOTUS made their decision. So we'll look through that. And we'll also see what Michael Flynn had to say about this, because he also submitted an application as an amicus, a friend of the court. Michael Flynn, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, was there, along with a bunch of other people. You can see these different foundations and defense funds and all the things. They all piled in here, said, Supreme Court, do something about this. And the Supreme Court did. So we'll put it all together and explain exactly what happened and what might be coming next. But it involved this judge, who is a Bush judge, a W judge, appointed back some time ago. Guys getting up there, 77, 78 years old, still as a judge over there, senior status. And he was the one who was getting stayed on his booty. Now, the Trump administration was celebrating about this. Pete Hegseth was talking about it. We saw Trump had a post about this. Even got a clip here of Hegseth saying, we're done with this crap, man. No, not happen anymore. Okay, we're done. And we've also got questions from Congress about impeachment. Are they going to do something to impeach these judges? Or are they just going to sit there on their booties and try to figure out new novel ways to spend our money? Probably going to be the latter. All right. So all that is coming up. So we'll spend some time in Supreme Court land at the start before we change gears and talk about Diddy. So we got a lot happening in the Diddy case, and Diddy is trying a new strategy here. And this one's pretty interesting. You see, this is a new notice of appearance from Nicole Westmoreland, who just filed. The trial is underway, basically. We're in jury selection. Some people don't really consider jury selection to be part of the trial, but, you know, it's pretty integral, so we do. So we've been covering it, but what is she doing here, coming skidding in at the last minute? Well, the strategy is about her ethnicity, because she is Black. I got my second Black lawyer, reports TMZ, and the DOJ have none, because the DOJ just has all those white women, man. So you see where this is going. It's going to be wild. So not only are we going to have baby oil conversations, we're going to have Maureen Comey, FBI director's daughter, same one who prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell and covered that whole thing up, is with a team of white women. And Diddy's got a Black lawyer now, so better look out, Maureen, you're in trouble. But we have some other filings here. They were upset yesterday about Diddy now has like 7 or 8 lawyers coming in, like the best of the best attorneys in the whole country are coming skidding in here. I don't know about that other attorney who just came in here. I don't know what her qualifications are other than what they explained, but Mark Garagos was there, and the DOJ is complaining about this. So Maureen Comey, Emily, Madison, Christie, and Meredith, and Mitzi, did they go out of outer space, this crew? Is Bezos sending them up on a rocket ship? I don't know. So they cited another YouTube video. All right, so they sent a complaint in. How dare you, other lawyers, talk to the other lawyers and stuff. So we'll go through it. We'll take a look at what some of these filings say. There was also an order from the judge that dropped today denying a couple of motions. So one of Diddy's victims is not showing up, apparently. And so there have been some rulings on that. And more specifically, what is going to be allowed at trial and by way of expert witness and evidence and all the stuff. So we'll put together what the judge has ordered before, as per usual, we jump into the trial excerpts courtesy of Inner City Press, Matthew Russell Lee reporting, and we'll see what happened today. So jury selection, kind of tedious a little bit, but trial starting on Monday. So we'll be well prepared to dig into it. So you can see it's getting spicy. All right. So all that being said, my friends, we had a great members only stream this morning. If you're looking for some extra content, some other stuff, if you're looking to connect with people on a little deeper level, a little bit of a less busy vibe, a little, calmer morning segments, come join us. This morning, we talked a little bit about Tina Peters. We talked about Tom Tillis and how useless he is. Man, he better reverse course on this Ed Martin thing, or there's going to be repercussions out of North Carolina, no doubt about it, political repercussions. We talked about Tom Tillis. We talked about Chuck Grassley. They're launching a pretty broad investigation against the Biden administration. Look at this list of people. So all these segments are coming out, but we talked about it this morning. And then we also talked about John Roberts, man, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He got sued by America First Legal. Our friend Stephen Miller is over there. You see the header on this lawsuit, baby. So that's coming out in another segment. We covered that this morning on the Membos Only stream. We'd love to have you as a Membo so you can join us during those streams. We go live in the mornings, 12 noon Eastern time, morning-ish, and 9 a.m. my time, Pacific time at the moment. So consider becoming a Membo. We'd love to have you, and see you tomorrow on the Membos Only stream in the morning. All right, so now, without any further ado, let's get into the business on the day, because we got some Supreme Court news to attend to. And here it is. Victory out of the Supreme Court comes in very short form. You can see it is a one paragraph order telling us that there will be a stay on a lower level judge's ruling. Now we'll parse together what this all means, but in particular, the DOJ can score a victory on this one, and the DOD is celebrating. Pete Hegseth posted this after the Supreme Court rules that the ban in the military can proceed. Lots of judges have been very unhappy with this executive order from Trump saying, no, the military is going to be for fighting wars and for military conflicts, not for flag party rainbow sessions floating around in the Atlantic on transgender yacht parties. Whatever's going on, no one knows, but no more of it, says Pete Hegseth. So how did we get here? Well, this was a case involving Benjamin Settle. This is the judge, not somebody who's suing. This, I think his gender hasn't changed or transitioned, but this is the judge. He was appointed by George W. Bush back in 2007-ish. He is 77 years old. He assumed senior status back in 2020, and so he got this case in front of him. Now, the Supreme Court has had this all bubble up because what he did is he said, actually, Trump, your executive order is reversed, essentially, right? I'm the president now. You can't control the military. What you've done by banning the trans is limit their constitutional rights to serve the military, blah, 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 all that crap. So he said, Trump, you're done, right? You have to allow this to continue on. Trump appealed it. We ended up at the Supreme Court. But Trump's final reply before the Supreme Court came down and issued their ruling came from our friend D. John Sauer over at the DOJ. And here is what he has shared with us. His final reply in support of a stay. Okay, the lower level judge said, Trump, you can't do the thing. They're saying, Supreme Court, come on now, step in here, stop that lower level judge. We can do the thing since, we're the president. So D. John Sauer sent this in, and you can see after we're done with this, we'll see what Lieutenant General Michael Flynn also had to say about this because he submitted an amicus brief. But here's what they wrote into the Supreme Court. Final word before the Supreme Court was going to come down and issue their order. They said the following. All right, 6 years ago, Supreme Court, this court, you stayed injunctions against the Mattis policy. Remember, Trump was here. General Mad Dog Mattis, remember, was over there at the DOD. He had a policy very similar to this. It generally disqualified individuals who have gender dysphoria or have received medical interventions for that dysphoria from starting or continuing military service, saying the 2025 policy at issue is materially indistinguishable. Our policy is not much different than theirs. Yet the district court enjoined The 2025 policy, all the same. Okay, the lower level judge that we just saw, he said, well, I don't care what the precedent says, I'll just do it anyways. And the Ninth Circuit denied a stay of the injunction without either court acknowledging this court, you, Supreme Court, and your prior orders. So all of these other judges are just issuing rulings deciding that the trans are allowed, even though the Supreme Court, we've done this before, is what they're saying, Supreme Court. Now, respondents likewise fail to explain how this new policy is any different than the prior policy that Mattis had in place, that this court, the Supreme Court, permitted to go into effect. None of the modest factual distinctions that they identify have any legal relevance under the correct analysis or the proper balancing of the equities. Now, the 2025 policy, just like the Mattis policy, so Trump's new policy, just like his old policy, represents an exercise of professional military judgment concerning the composition of the nation's armed forces. We want to know who's in the military and have people who are properly qualified serving. The 2025 policy, just like the Mattis policy, turns on gender dysphoria and related medical interventions, right? As opposed to just saying, you're a trans person and we don't like your lifestyle, for example. We think that you're conflicted in the brain and maybe you should go. It's not that. It's not a judgment or anything like that. It's saying, listen, you're in the wrong body, right? By your own admission. That's called gender dysphoria. That's a medical condition. And if you've gotten treatment for that, like hormones and the lopidectomy or the addictomy or whatever you're doing to your body, well, then that is expensive for the military. They don't want to pay for that anymore and have to deal with integration issues. And so since it is a medical condition and it's not some other discriminatory effect, it is not a suspect or quasi-suspect class. So they're not being victimized, all right? The 2025 policy, just like the Mattis policy, warrants only rational basis review. And as we always talk about here, when somebody's coming to the court and they're saying, my constitutional rights are being violated, there's generally 3 different standards or tests we run that alleged violation through to see if the government, first of all, is violating a right, and then secondly, whether they can do it, because they do it a lot. And the lowest level standard test is rational basis review. Now, if you're a suspect class, like if they were saying, well, black people can't come in the military, like, whoa, right? That is a suspect class because of the ethnic derivation. Now you're sort of splicing people by something that is immutable, that is not a medical condition, and it is now a suspect class. If you make that distinction, obviously that would be unconstitutional, but we're not making a decision on that basis. This is a medical decision. Just like if you have asthma, you can't join the military. Just like if your back is broken, okay, kind of a problem participating in the rucks. So the 2025 policy, like the Mattis policy, addresses both accession, and just to clear that up again, so rational basis is the lowest level. The highest level, right, if you're talking about ethnicity or race, would be the highest level, which would be the strict scrutiny test. In between it is intermediate. So when we're talking about different classes, you go up the scale, the more suspect or quasi-suspect the class is. So here, and there are retention standards as well, and thus it affects both aspiring and current service members. Now, this court should once again allow the military's chosen policy to go in effect, just like you did last time. Here's why we're going to win, Supreme Court. The 2025 policy warrants only rational basis review. It easily satisfies that. We don't need to go into a complicated analysis on it. They say, as our application explains, our policy on the bans on the trans is drawing classifications based on medical condition. That's all. Gender dysphoria and the medical interventions that are necessary. And since it's medical conditions, it's rational basis. It's just the lowest level. If the government has literally a rational basis, if they can just articulate why they need to do it, then since it's not impinging on a constitutional right, since it's not impinging on a suspect class, then they're allowed to do it, especially in the military context. Now, they have failed to justify why they should be subjected to heightened scrutiny, which would be the higher level test. Now, they attempt to do this. They justify this heightened scrutiny on the ground that the 2025 policy discriminates based on transgender status, saying, well, just the fact that you're living that lifestyle or something, I guess, is their argument. But they say, as the district court acknowledged, even lower down below, the word transgender doesn't even appear in the policy itself. No one's targeting transgender. They didn't even write it. Rather, the 2025 policy, just like Carter, Mattis, and Austin before it, even Lloyd Austin had it under Biden, the double face mask and absentee Secretary of Defense, they all focused on dysphoria as the clinical problem. It's not identity. Hello. And so these people fail to identify any operative provision of the 2025 policy that shows otherwise. They note that the 2025 Trump's new policy draws classifications based on whether someone has even attempted to transition to another individual. But that is the classification based on medical intervention, right? Transitioning is a medical thing that they do. It's not on identity, right? They're changing their physicality. That's the whole point. Now, all of the other policies, Carter, Mattis, Austin, they all drew on classifications just like this, just based on medical interventions. And they also note that those are not disqualified under the 2025 policy either. Those who have never been diagnosed with gender dysphoria and who have never received interventions must serve in accordance with their birth sex, right? Now, but those same individuals likewise had to serve in accordance with their sex under the Carter, Mattis, and Austin policies, regardless of their asserted gender identity. Okay, so they're saying, look, they're upset. They're saying, wait, this policy is not only about medical interventions. Here's why. People who have not undergone a transition, so let's say you go in there, they say, hi, Robert, you're going to be in the military. So, yes, sir, but it's not Robert anymore. It's Roberta. They're like, what? Like, yeah, it's Roberta. You sure? Well, I haven't undergone any transitions yet. All right. Well, then you're going to go with the dudes over here since you're a dude. And they're going to say, if you're suing, then you'd be saying, that's a violation of my rights. I identify as Roberta. And so they're saying that's a violation of your constitutional rights because it's identity. And they say, well, no, it's not. It's not any change. It's not any violation at all. Nothing happened. Those same individuals had to do that back under the prior administrations, under Carter, Mattis, and Austin, regardless of their asserted gender identity. So unless you were like actually transitioning, then you had to go be Robert. Just as it was not discrimination against trans identifying people then, it is not discrimination against trans identifying people now, just because Trump is doing it. So chill out. Now, indeed, the district court's injunction requires the military to maintain that aspect of the Austin policy. It's what we're doing. Now, ultimately, the people suing cannot dispute that. Even if an individual identifies with the opposite sex, the 2025 policy allows that individual to serve under the same rules as all other service members, so long as that individual has never suffered from gender dysphoria and has never received interventions, okay? So you can come in here, you can identify however you want to, and you can be trans, but you got to serve as your birth gender, and you can't explain that you're suffering from gender dysphoria because now you're suffering from that, and you can't get interventions. So you're going to go act as a dude and just deal with it. And if you start to say, well, I'm uncomfortable in my body, I feel like Roberta. Nope. That is a problem because now you're experiencing gender dysphoria. And so now you need to be disqualified because you've got a medical condition suddenly. Now, in nevertheless insisting that the 2025 policy discriminates based on transgender status, respondents cite various public statements about the policy, but it's irrelevant that when discussing issues related to the policy in the court of public opinion, officials use common terms like transgender, right? So they're saying, listen. Well, Hegseth and Trump, they're all out talking about the trans. They're all out saying this, that, and the other, trans this, trans that. And they're saying, so obviously the policy means that, even though they're talking about gender dysphoria. And they say, well, a lot of people talk about a lot of things, and a lot of words mean a lot of things. This is what the policy says, okay? So just read the policy, Judge. In a court of law, what matters is the actual text of the policy, which is a directive. It's neutral on its face. It's not attacking anybody. It's addressing a matter within the core executive of the responsibility of Trump. Now, the policy's operative provisions draw classifications based on gender dysphoria, the condition, and related medical interventions. And they assert the people suing, the transitioners, on the 2025 policy, they say it's referring to us. Okay, we know who they're talking about. They might say transgender or dysphoria, gender dysphoria, but we know they're talking about us because they're very sensitive with labels, as we know. But so did the Carter and the Austin policies. They all referenced it the same way we are. That guidance was all allowed. Now, they also make a mistake in asserting that the policy uses gender dysphoria as a proxy to ban all of the trans. They say, well, that's just an excuse. Okay. It's not even about gender dysphoria. You just hate trans people. And the policy, they say, what are you talking about? It's the same definition as the APA does, the American Psychiatric Association, that they reference in the DSM-5. It's not some special definition for you. It's the same. Thus, according to the APA, it says transgender people suffer from gender dysphoria, and that distinction is important to keep in mind. And respondents attempt to equate that condition and that status, but that is in contradiction to the DSM-5. Gender dysphoria doesn't necessarily equate to status. It's not the same thing. Get your pronouns right, dude. It also contradicts this court's precedents, by the way, which instructs that classifications based on a specific condition are just that, even if the condition correlates with some other classification. Okay, here's another explanation. While it is true, and we love this example in the trans cases because they're like, wait, this is blowing all of their brains. Okay, so forget we're in a trans case right now. Forget about all that craziness. Here's just a regular case. While it is true that only women can become pregnant, it does not follow that every legislative classification concerning pregnancy is a sex-based classification, right? So, okay, so just because only women can become pregnant, something that concerns pregnancy doesn't mean it's attacking women, right? It's kind of a societal thing that touches on pregnancy. It's not a gender distinction, which would be subject to higher scrutiny than rational basis review. But my point in this, using this case, is just hysterical in a trans case because all the transgenders are just having a friggin' meltdown over this. While it's true, the Supreme Court said it's true only women can become pregnant. They're like, what? All the transgender bros are like, I'm pregnant right now. I think. I don't really actually know how it works. So they're, they don't like that. But the fact that they keep using it, Trump keeps using it, it's just like kind of a, the Supreme Court said only women can get pregnant. They're like, no, dudes can too. Okay, whatever. So it's just beautiful. I just want to point that out. It's just like that kind of like little twist right there. Nor is this a case where it would be irrational to regulate a condition other than as a surrogate for a protected trait. Now, to the contrary, the clinically significant distress or impairment that is characterizing gender dysphoria, there's actually a condition, right? It's not just like a mental thing, it's distress, it's impairment. There's other related medical interventions, are obviously rational causes for concern in the military, especially with similar standards for a range of other medical conditions. Like other people who have conflicted problems don't come in either. Now, regardless, Supreme Court, even if the 2025 policy discriminated based on trans identifying status, heightened scrutiny to move it up would still be inappropriate because trans identifying people are not a suspect or quasi-suspect class. Not yet, right? Not unless the liberals get back in charge. Now, respondents contend that trans identifying people satisfy a 4-factor test. They say, well, the court has identified classes and categories that automatically get strict scrutiny. You say, oh, it's impacting this class, like women or ethnicity, race was the big one, religion, those types of categories. If it's impacting those things, they up strict scrutiny because it looks like your law is impacting those protected statuses, right? Freedom of religion. The law impacts religion directly. Can't do that. So we got to really have scrutiny on that one. But they say the trans basically should get the same scrutiny, maybe, as like a law that impedes religion because trans are their new religion, basically. That four-factor test has no basis in the Constitution, doesn't come into the original understanding of equal protection at all. And this court has essentially gotten out of the business of finding new quasi-suspect classes. They want the trans to be lopped in there as well. Now, even if applying the test were appropriate, trans identifying people would not satisfy it, all right? This court has already held that individuals with mental disabilities should not be treated as a quasi-suspect class because the government must have flexibility and freedom from judicial oversight in shaping and limiting their remedial efforts, right? So in other words, like somebody who is mentally unwell, they get treated according to different standards because they're not mentally well. Now, the same reasoning applies to individuals with gender dysphoria. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, and the respondents themselves seek to conflate these individuals with those who have trans identifying status, right? Just because you identify as trans doesn't mean you're experiencing the symptoms of gender dysphoria, I guess. Moreover, as a historical matter, trans identifying people do not exhibit obvious, immutable, or distinguishing characteristics that define them as a discrete group. And they are not politically powerless. That's for sure. They're basically running things until recently. Respondents also attempt to justify heightened scrutiny on the ground that 2025 policy discriminates on the basis of sex, right? So now if you pass a law that discriminates against women, you say, can't do that. Heightened scrutiny for that one. But the policy references sex in only two contexts. It describes certain medical interventions and declines to provide a preferential exemption from valid standards for individuals who do have gender dysphoria or other related interventions. And as our application explains, neither of those contexts constitutes discrimination. They have no response to that. They cite some other cases about status and trans status. That assertion is incorrect because the policy does not discriminate based upon the status. We've already explained this many times. But that wasn't an equal protection case anyways, and it doesn't extend here. Nothing in that case suggests that if the government regulates a medical condition in a way while acknowledging that person's sex, like for example, requiring additional warnings related to uterine cancer, because women have uteruses, or is it uteri? I don't know. It is engaged in sex discrimination per se. They're saying, well, we're making a warning for uterines. It's not like discriminatory, but only certain people have uteruses or uteri. Now, respondents, the trans group, argue that the 2025 policy is not entitled to deference, right? In other words, the court shouldn't give the benefit of the doubt to the government, saying, but this court has repeatedly recognized the judgments that of the political branches are, in fact, owed a healthy deference in the area of military affairs. And the transition people do not seriously suggest that policies in cases like that other case, which excluded women from a registration requirement, or Goldman, which banned a Jewish psychologist from wearing a yarmulke, would have been upheld if adopted by the government in a civilian context, right? The government couldn't have done those things. Respondents attempt to distinguish this case on the ground that the military rushed the policy with no new study or evidence or anything. But deference does not rest on those things, okay? We weren't required to go get a study from their little, school at Berkeley in order to do this. Instead, deference rests on the separation of powers, and the courts are not properly equipped, as Goldman has said. Now, in any event, issuance, and maybe that was in the military context, the yarmulke. So anyways, in any event, issuance of the 2025 policy from Trump was no more rushed than President Biden's decision to revoke the Mattis policy. He did it 5 days after he took office. He said, come on in, trans, take over, without conducting any new military study or evaluation at all. Trump just came in, did the same thing. And in issuing the 2025 policy, the DOD was not starting from scratch, in fact, much more prepared than Joe. The department issued the 2025 policy only after considering what Mattis decided back in 2018, based on the work of a panel of experts back then that said the following, quote, there are substantial risks associated with allowing accession and retention of individuals with a history or diagnosis of gender dysphoria. Now, thus, even if Deference applies only where military policies are based upon the considered professional judgment of appropriate military officials. Deference is warranted here. So you should find in our favor, Supreme Court. Now, in addition to that, we have satisfied the rules. Our application easily satisfies the rational basis review test. It's not infringing on their constitutional rights, and the government is rational in making this decision. The district court itself acknowledged that the government has important interest in maintaining military readiness, cohesion, good order, discipline, and managing its costs. And the 2025 policy, the new one, just like the one before it, is rationally related to achieving those ends, which is basically the test, right? If you're in law school, or like rationally related to achieving those ends. What's the end? Oh, readiness, cohesion, good order. What's the action, the government action? It's the executive order. It's the ban. And are they related? Yes, they are. Why? We've got military experts who all acknowledged it. Now, respondents have little to say in response to this other than, while they're trans, they should be considered like, religious icons, and nothing that squares with rational basis review. More importantly, they fault the government. They blame us. They say that we're just relying on hypothetical or speculative concerns here. But what? Under rational basis review, we can do that. We may rely on rational speculation unsupported by evidence or empirical data. Well, that's a hell of a quote. Yeah, and that's true. And just to be clear, like rational basis review, it's like such a low standard. The government can do whatever it wants, basically. You just speculate. You're like, when you ask yourself, how the hell did that thing happen? How the hell did our government do that? That's why. Rational basis. As long as there's even rational speculation that's unsupported by evidence or any empirical data, they can just do it. It's like why San Francisco can spend, I think, $20 million or whatever it was, 20 years, whatever, to build a bathroom with 2 toilets in it that you can see people's feet from the stalls while you're walking on the subway. Here, there is much more than that. In other words, we're allowed to speculate. They know it. Now, here, there's much more. The 2025 policy is not speculation. It's supported by all the evidence and considerations favoring the Mattis policy, the one we had before, and more recent evidence as well. Now, respondents, the transitioners, likewise err in contending that the government has provided, they say, no evidence supporting their conclusion. They don't say that this enhances military readiness. There's no proof that this enhances unit cohesion. But even if that were true, under rational basis review, this test is so low, the government had no obligation to produce evidence, okay? We're not infringing on your rights, so get out of here. Instead, the burden lies with them to negative every conceivable basis which might support the policy, whether or not the basis has a foundation in the record, right? So if you think we have no rational basis to make this decision, you got to show that. So come show it. They failed to do that. They don't address the standards at all. They don't even talk about the medical component here, let alone explain why it is rational for the military to treat other medical conditions. Okay, if we can do this with asthma, we can do this with diabetes and eating disorders, why not gender dysphoria? Now, respondents do not dispute that the department has historically aligned the mental disorders it is deemed presumptively disqualifying with those identified in the DSM, right, which is the APA's kind of blanket standard. That the DSM-5 identifies gender dysphoria as a condition associated with clinically significant distress or impairment, or that Carter, Mattis, and Austin all included this on their lists, is showing that this was standard. Now, respondents thus fail to explain why our standards are not rationally related to ensuring that those entering the service are free of medical conditions, physical defects that may require excessive time lost from duty as they're undergoing their chopodicophomies. Now, respondents likewise fail to explain why the 2025 retention standards, in other words, they're not any different. It's the same policies that everyone else was implementing, just I would say a little bit more broadly, which generally disqualifies service members who are diagnosed with gender dysphoria instead of allowing them to undergo gender transition, are not rationally related to the military standards. You got to show us why we're not right. For example, they attempt to downplay concerns about the efficacy of treatment for gender dysphoria. So in the government's position, they say, well, we got to spend millions of dollars, thousands of dollars, whatever it is. I don't know what these things cost, but probably a lot. And we got to come out of pocket. Then they got to take time off to recover, get sewn back, whatever's happening, and we got to deal with all of that. Then there's unit cohesion problems. They're like, wait, okay, so John just came back as Joanna. And they're going, what? Hi, Joanna. Welcome back to the group. So I guess see in the showers or something. What? So all of that has cost to it. And then if they get the treatment, so then they get the transition, are they suddenly cured and, happy, healthy people that don't have any problems in their lives because their body matches their internal dysmorphia? Don't think so. They don't dispute that they don't even challenge it, that there is considerable scientific uncertainty concerning whether these medical interventions like cross-hormone therapy and reassignment surgery, whether they fully remedy this at all. And the mental health problems associated with it in the first place, right? Go through all of that stuff. And then there's a lot of people that regret it. And now they're making documentaries and whatever about it. Similarly, respondents question what one particular study showed about the effect of dysphoria on non-deployability. But they don't dispute that service members receiving these interventions for dysphoria could be rendered non-deployable for potentially significant amounts of time. They say, no, that's true. They might not, might have to take some time off or whatever. And while they contend that medical interventions related to dysphoria make up only a small fraction of the budget, they're like, well, it's like 1%. So we need to transition as many people as possible. They don't dispute that, all else being equal, service members with dysphoria cost disproportionately more on a per capita basis than other service members. Yeah, it's a small part of the budget, but it should be none, such that excluding individuals with gender dysphoria will save costs in the long term. And they don't dispute that the DoD treats other medical conditions that impose similar costs as presumptively disqualifying, right? You can't join the military and have the American taxpayer pay for your medical conditions so you can go through your little weird thing. Now, respondents resort to arguing that the 2025 policy reflects such an animus towards transgender people that it is unconstitutional. Okay, so Trump is so bigoted against them. The policy's not. But the district court did not make an animus determination. The lower level judge said, I'm not even going to get into that for good reason. To repeat, okay, the 2025 policy allows trans identifying individuals to serve. It does, unless they suffer or suffered from the medical condition of gender dysphoria or have received medical interventions for that condition. So if you come in, you say, look, I'm a dude in a woman's body or a woman in a dude's body or whatever it is, it's fine. But you're going to be your gender, birth sex, go participate. And the policy is expressly premised on legitimate purposes, including the maintaining of high mental and physical standards necessary for the military, reducing the medical and readiness risks associated with gender dysphoria, addressing the costs of the related medical interventions, and delivering a ready and deployable force. Thus, the 2025 policy thus belies any suggestion that it is motivated by animus at all. It is legitimate. Now, in any event, the 2025 policy should be upheld so long as it can reasonably be understood to result from a justification independent of unconstitutional grounds. And it cannot be said that it is animus. The 2025 policy has a legitimate grounding, and the court must accept this justification. And they haven't identified any differences, honestly, between the prior policy and this policy. They don't dispute that the prior court in 2019, you, Supreme Court, you stated they sued last time. We've already done this. We said no trans in the military back in 2016. And everyone sued, and the Supreme Court said your lawsuits fail. We're doing it again. Back then, this court necessarily determined that the government had made the requisite strong showing of a likelihood of success, that the Mattis policy was consistent with equal protection. The trans are not a suspect class. They don't get heightened scrutiny, and their dysphoria is disqualifying. Now, they fail to identify anything about the policy that would justify anything differently here. But they say, no, it is different. They say, while the MATIS policy did not bar all trans people from military, this new policy does. They say, no, it doesn't, dummies. Under the 2025 policy, just like under the MATIS policy, persons who are diagnosed with or have a history of gender dysphoria are disqualified. But not all transgender people suffer from gender dysphoria. Thus, under both policies, Carter and Lloyd Austin, service members who have never been diagnosed with gender dysphoria and who have never received interventions may serve in accordance with their sex, regardless of their identity. And so they're going to say, well, that's like making them live in a trapped body. Well, they don't have to join the military, so that's their decision. They can go live their life in alternative clothes elsewhere. To be sure, as compared to the MATIS policy, the 2025 policy narrows the circumstances in which an otherwise disqualified person may serve. But it makes no difference that the military has chosen to narrow the standard for overcoming a disqualification and to eliminate a grandfather clause that has diminishing prospective significance. Under rational basis, it was rational back then, it's rational back now. Under rational basis review, the fact that a line might have been drawn differently at different points in time doesn't cast doubt on the policy's validity. Now, they also then come back and say, well, the MATIS policy was independent judgment by military officials. So it was much more allowed. It wasn't like reflexively implemented like Trump and Hegseth, deviating from the hallmarks of military policy making. So you didn't do it in the way that we want you to do it, which would have given us the result that we wanted, so you can't do it at all. But nothing about the process that led to the 25 policy affects the standard of review, regardless of that process. It doesn't discriminate. They're not a quasi or suspect class. They're not entitled to protections at heightened scrutiny, and the executive is entitled to a healthy deference in their decision making. Similarly, the 2025 policy, just like the MATIS policy, would also warrant only rational basis review, easily satisfying that. And in any event, the transitioner's premise is wrong. The issuance of the new policy was no more a deviation than Biden. Biden came in, reversed MATIS after 5 days. And if the MATIS policy was based on a review of all the information, then we have that basis on which to rely. Now, they say that, well, your report is bad. They say the predictions of that report have been undermined by experience. They say, well, Lloyd Austin let in a lot more trans and the military was fine. So that prior reliance should be ignored. But they say, well, that's your opinion, man. That is for the executive, not for the district court to evaluate. The district court cannot substitute its own assessment for the executive judgments on matters of national security and running the military. Now, third, the transitioners say that MATIS's old policy lacked the animus-laden language. Wow. So they just don't like how mean it is because they get emotional damage very easily. And Trump wrote it mean, it hurts our feelings. But as explained above, their assertion that the new policy was motivated by animus lacks any merit. And quite apart from any asserted animus, the policy, just like MATIS's policy, is independently grounded in legitimate interests in military readiness, cohesion, good order, discipline, managing costs, and preserving men and women. Now, respondents also challenge other claims, right? So now they come here with the shotgun approach. Well, if we don't get strict scrutiny or intermediate scrutiny, what else do we get? How about First Amendment? Oh, yeah, due process. Okay, equitable estoppel claims. I say all these claims, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. Contrary to their assertion, the policy does not require service members to adopt a particular ideological viewpoint. They say, well, if a trans person comes in who never suffered from gender dysphoria or got gender dysphoria treatment, and they have to live in their alternative body and they're not expressing who they are, and that's forcing them to think a certain way. This is ridiculous. They say that's not true. It doesn't stop them from being candid about who they are, whether in their professional or personal lives if they want. The 2025 standards don't restrict speech at all, let alone on the basis of viewpoint or content. They can talk about it. Rather, like the DSM-5, the retention standards disqualify people based on gender dysphoria. It's in the rule book, man, of the APA, and medical interventions. It's not identity per se. So if John comes back as Joanna, we say, well, okay, that looks like a symptom of gender dysmorphia to me, dysphoria. So you better see a doctor about that. Doctor comes in and says, "You sure you're not John?" "Yeah, I'm sure I'm Joanna." "How sure?" "I'm pretty sure I'm Joanna." "All right, well, according to the new standards under the DSM-5, that's gender dysphoria. So enjoy your time outside the military being Joanna elsewhere." Saying, and those individuals who are not disqualified under the 2025 policy, they must follow the same grooming standards, okay, and other standards that are applicable to their sex. So all the ladies got to shave or something. What? Just as they would under Carter, Mattis, and Austin. All right, I don't know. Respondents make no attempt to explain how that could be a First Amendment violation. Well, yeah, you got to do what all the dudes do. You got to do what all the ladies do. So groom yourself accordingly. Well, I want to grow out long, beautiful hair and let it flow in the wind. Well, no, you're a dude. Cut it. Saying here that could be a First Amendment violation under the 2025. It's a freedom of my speech is to let my flowy hair bask in the wind. But they had to do that under prior policies as well. So then they bring up procedural due process, right? Well, we're being attacked without or being disqualified without having the proper steps being taken to give us our day in court or our day in hearing. Now, as our application explains, they cannot identify any relevant liberty or property interest that is protected by the due process clause. What do they have? They contend that they will experience stigma. They said, well, we'll be discharged for having an identity that the government has deemed inconsistent with being honorable. No, it's not about the identity. Hello, you've got gender dysphoria. But under the policy, any discharge is honorable, by the way, except where the service member's record otherwise warrants a lower characterization. And no one is discharged for asserting an identity, obviously. They also it's about having a medical condition. And respondents also contend that the Mattis policy's exemption for current service members already diagnosed created a reasonable expectation that active duty respondents would not be punished for disclosing their status or transitioning. But they say, in other words, we got duped. Lloyd Austin said, yeah, come on in. Lop a dick off of me. No problem at all. Line them up. And then they started disclosing and coming out and transitioning. And they said, well, now, contrary to that, service members did not acquire a constitutionally protected property interest in the continued existence of the grandfather clause, right? Just because some other military goon thought that this was useful policy doesn't mean we have to continue that. That's why we have elections and change the government. Now, respondents therefore lack any relevant liberty interest or property interest on which to base their due process claim. So what are they complaining was taken from them without lawful process? Now, even if they could identify an interest like that, their claim would still fail. And as our application explains, Supreme Court, they don't object to any specific procedure. So their claim is actually a substantive due process claim that is trying to be cast in procedural terms, right? They don't like the outcome rather than the process. Their opposition confirms as much, saying that the remedy that they want is an exception, right? They actually want a change in the policy. They're not saying that the policy was applied to them in a bad process. The policy doesn't give you an exception. We want it written in there. Well, sorry, can't do that. The substantive challenge lacks merit because the policy is rationally related to a legitimate government interest and you can't stop it. Finally, their equitable estoppel claim fails under the dubious assumption that is lacking any basis in this court's precedent that a common law estoppel claim may sometimes be brought against the federal government, let alone the military. They have failed to establish a key element, which would be affirmative misconduct here. So stop somebody from doing something bad. We haven't done anything bad. They say we changed our policy. That's not misconduct. So their old common law claim, which is a nice, last ditch attempt effort from them, which has been successful in other courts. I think we just covered that yesterday. She's like, oh yeah, common law, intrusion upon seclusion. We're going to give you the right to prevent Doge from accessing the Social Security Administration because of an old tort she pulled out of her booty. So they're trying that here. Supreme Court didn't buy it. Now, and of course, the Trump administration responded denying that, saying they have missed the key elements. They also argue that, well, this is a rare case, Supreme Court, because trans are special, where universal relief is appropriate. But that is the constant refrain of parties that seek and courts that grant improper universal injunctions. Okay, this is happening every day now. As in those cases, their supposedly case-specific justifications would invite universal relief in almost every case. Now, they assert that they would suffer irreparable harm if the injunction were stayed as to everyone except them, right? So there were like 7 trans people or whatever who were coming and suing, and they wanted a global and nationwide injunction. Well, just let them stay. No. They want all their friends and their friends' friends, so they have their little trans parties or whatever. But they provide no basis for that assertion other than a preference. They just want it to apply to everyone else. But that's not irreparable harm to them. They say compliance with a more limited injunction would be impracticable if you splice and dice it and you have different people come in and different people go. But that is not true. And even if it were, it wouldn't matter. It's up to the government to decide whether practicalities require going beyond the requirements of the injunction. Courts may not require more relief than necessary to remedy the injury simply because it thinks it's going to be more efficient. I'm just going to fix this too while we're at it. Now, the respondents contend that this group called Gender Justice League, it's like the Space Cadet Avengers or whatever, is entitled to injunction that intends to all its members nationwide, not merely those who were just upset about this. But Article 3 says no. It's litigants in this court. You can't go out there and issue a class action for all these people. Like, what do you think they are, gangbangers? No. You're not Tren de Aragua. Now, respondents don't dispute that if the Ninth Circuit were to uphold the district court's injunction, cert would be warranted, nor could they. The injunction nullifies the military's sensitive judgments about who deserves to belong in the military. And this is causing irreparable harm to the government. Explaining. There are ongoing harms to the military happening right now. And all of these injunctions cannot be stayed with the prior reversal of the injunctions the last time around when we had the Mattis situation. So then the transitioners, as we come to the conclusion and start to wrap this up, saying they also say if the government suffers irreparable injury, it would lead to inequitable results. But the government is responding to their bunch of additional claims that are coming from them. They are making mistakes in all of them. And when you settle it all down and weigh out the equities, balance the harms and the benefits, they fail to distinguish their alleged harms. They say, well, we're going to be harmed, right? We're going to be harmed. It's going to hurt us. We're going to be kicked out, blah, blah, blah. While the Mattis policy may have affected somewhat fewer individuals than this one, it imposed the same harms that they're alleging here. Okay, Mattis, we were allowed to do it. Back then, we're allowed to do it now. Mattis required the discharge of current service members who were diagnosed with gender dysphoria after the effective date, or anybody who sought to undergo a transition. We're going to do that same thing now. And they attempt to establish irreparable harm, but they fail even on their own terms. They keep saying, they write this, our constitutional freedoms are under attack. But as explained above, they're not going to win on those challenges. They say it's going to irreparably harm them by disqualifying them from the military. But it's a medical condition. We're allowed to do it. In any event, even if they could show irreparable harm, if they're kicked out of the military, the public interest outweighs their harms. They say, well, our service members getting booted out is going to impact our readiness. But they say, no, after considering our policy and studies, the department has come to a different conclusion. We don't need you. And this court should give deference to the executive. And since the department is going to win on this, the only real question is when, not whether, their service must end. Prolonged uncertainty on that point would benefit no one. And so for the foregoing reasons, D. John Sauer Trump's Solicitor General, writing to the Supreme Court, says, you should vacate the lower level judge's injunction that reverses the ban and says that the trans can stay in the military. You should vacate that order entirely. Or at minimum, you should stay the injunction except as to the 8 individual respondents in this case, signed by D. John Sauer. Now, we'll see what the Supreme Court said, but just briefly, let me show you what Michael Flynn and a bunch of others sent in here, another 25-pager, and they say, hey, look, all these people were piling in, saying, Supreme Court, hello, we're here on this. They say, remember, on January 20th, Trump came out and issued the EO, and the following week, we identified anybody who was transgender as being booted out within 60 days. So then 7 plaintiffs sued to stop this, led by, quote, Emily Schilling, he says. The named plaintiff is a biological male identifying as a female, transitioned during service in the Navy in 2021. The district court said that Hegseth is discriminating against that person. It said the policy failed intermediate scrutiny, which is that middle level standard, and more. But they write, they say, the military readiness of Trump and his administration are being rewarded, right? Even with increased retention. So you start making the military into a lethal fighting force, and people want to join it. First, the district court treated this case like it's a civilian case, but it's not, it's military. Deference is due to the military. In fact, the framers of our Constitution decided this would be the structure. They improperly relied on legal decisions to try to stop Trump's implementation of this, and saying the court attacked the DOD and is trying to usurp their power. And so they submitted their amicus. You can see a lot more details here, just showing you the outline of it. But in conclusion, they say, grant our request so that we can increase the readiness of our military. And what happened? Good news from the Supreme Court for now. Here's what they said. From the Supreme Court of the United States, the application that was presented by D. John Sauer and the DOD to Justice Kagan and by her referred to the court is granted. The March 27th preliminary injunction that was issued by that lower level judge out of Washington is stayed pending the disposition of the appeal in the District Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. Okay, so it's a stay. It's not a dismissal. The case is not completely disposed of. Trump is not completely vindicated. But what we're seeing here is a good sign, right? It's saying, everything is going to be paused. We're going to see what the Court of Appeals does on this in the Ninth Circuit. And if they botch this, then we'll step in. But if they get it right, we're not going to need to step in, and the stay will continue. Or if the Ninth Circuit rather deals with it appropriately, the injunction will be dissolved, right? The stay will be in force until the injunction is dissolved and the ban goes away permanently. So you don't need like a big final order from SCOTUS, just kicking it down to the Court of Appeals and telling the Court of Appeals to deal with this. Now, if the Court of Appeals says that the ban is reversed, right, and that the ban has to be dissolved so that people can come back in, that would essentially be going against this order. Because at this moment, what we see is the Supreme Court has seen that there's enough that at least gets us to a stay. So let me finish reading this so you can see what the dissent looks like. But the disposition, if such a writ is timely sought. So the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, remember, this worked its way up from the district court through the Court of Appeals. They filed an application for a stay at the Supreme Court. Now, we're not done in the Court of Appeals yet. They kind of jumped over them. And the Supreme Court hasn't fully accepted the case yet because it's not fully briefed yet. And they're just saying, while this is pending in the middle court, we're going to pause everything. So the status quo is maintained. If certiorari is denied, so if the Supreme Court, if the Ninth Circuit does something and the Supreme Court doesn't like it, they'll deny it, then the stay shall terminate automatically and the injunction should come back and the ban would be reversed again, right? So trans could go back in the military. In the event that cert is granted, the stay shall terminate upon the sending down of judgment of this court. So it's basically a holding pattern. Now, if the Ninth Circuit does the right thing, then the Supreme Court won't have to get involved. If the Ninth Circuit does the wrong thing, then the Supreme Court will get involved. 3 judges would have dissented here, so it's like a 6-3 decision. Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson. So split along party lines, right? So the 3 liberals dissented. They would have denied the application. All 6 conservatives voted in favor of it. So thank you, John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, saying we're going to let this thing stay. Hopefully the Ninth Circuit listens to this ruling, affirms Trump's position that the ban should stay in effect because he has the power to do it, and kicks this case back down to the district court to dissolve the injunction there. And this is a permanent victory. But Ninth Circuit could always do something differently, and then we could be right back here and having the Supreme Court get involved again. But as it stands, a good victory. And it's nice to see Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts joining in on this, saying, granted, the stay is now in effect, so trans are now banned. Pete Hegseth also posted this, celebrating no more trans at the DOD. Reposting something from Mark Levin. Shout out to Mark. President Trump also celebrating this, sharing an article, it looks like, on True Social, saying the Supreme Court lets Trump's ban on transgender military service take effect. Sharing this piece over, it looks like, from the Wall Street Journal. Very happy about that. And we saw Hegseth was also speaking, saying, we are leaving wokeness and weakness behind. No more pronouns, no more climate change obsessions, no more emergency jab mandates, and no more dudes in dresses. We're done with that crap, man. Sheesh.
We are leaving wokeness and weakness behind. No more pronouns, no more climate change obsession, no more emergency vaccine mandates, no more dudes in dresses. We're done with that shit. We are leaving wokeness and
all right,
weakness.
Pete, baby. So we got that from Pete. No more wokeness, no more dudes in dresses. We're done with that. Not happening anymore. Now, Mike Johnson was asked, there's a lot of these problematic judges. I'm sure Judge Anna C. Reyes, I think she's over in DC, is also having a meltdown over this. Supreme Court. She was screaming at Hegseth in another transgender case, just going bananas. What are we going to do about these problematic judges? Mike Johnson, are we going to perhaps impeach them, or are you guys too busy working on spending more money?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to follow up on your comments about Congressman Issa's bill on judges. So are judicial impeachments off the table for the rest of this Congress?
No, look, impeachments are never off the table if it's merited. But in our system, we've had 15 federal judges impeached in the entire history of the country. I mean, there may be some that I feel merit that, but you got to get the votes for it, right? And it's a very high burden. And frankly, the bar is high crimes and misdemeanors. I mean, the last federal judge that was impeached, I think, was caught like, taking cash in an envelope. It's like, it's got to be a pretty brazen offense, a real open crime that everybody could agree to. So short of that, if we don't have the votes, and by the way, even if we could get an impeachment article through the House on a federal judge, it's unlikely that they would be tried and convicted in the Senate on that with the divided number we have. So short of that, what can we do? I mean, we've done everything within our power to solve that problem. And remember the stats. I think it's 67% of all national injunctions issued against a president in the last 100 years were against one president. His name's Donald J. Trump. 90% of those were from openly, Democrat-appointed judges that many would regard as this other judge as activists or people venue shop to get in their courts. So we all know it's a real problem. It's not what the Founding Fathers intended. So what can we do? Using our power in the House. Darrell Iss's bill is a great response. The No Rogue Rulings Act would prohibit a single individual judge from issuing a nationwide injunction like that to stop the entire policy of the administration. I think that is a very common sense standard, and one that would kind of get back to the original intent and eliminate the ability of just one activist to just stop everything. And it's very reasonable legislation. We passed it through the House. We sent it to the Senate with every expectation that they should be able to take that up. And I certainly hope they can, because again, it shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be something that every American agrees with. We've got to restore faith in our system of justice. And it was eroded over the last 4 years under the Biden administration for all the reasons we know, and have recounted here many times. And it falls to us to make sure that people can believe. Lady Justice has a blindfold for a reason, right? That the symbol is that it's equal justice under law. It's chiseled into the marble above the Supreme Court's entrance when you walk in. We have to restore that. If you don't have the people's faith in the system of justice, fair judges, then you don't have anything in a republic.
It's true.
And that's why this is so important. We'll keep advancing it.
It's true. That's why we want you to do stuff about it. So it sounds like some legislation has moved forward. Impeachments, obviously, would be a very tall order. And we know that they're not going to get 2/3 in the Senate for an impeachment of a federal judge, but we don't need it to go all the way. They impeached Trump twice. Okay. Part of the process is the penalty. And all you got to do is impeach one judge. The rest of them hopefully get the message. All right. So good update there. So big victory out of the Supreme Court. And they're slowly starting to percolate their way up there. And we're starting to transition into more Supreme Court decisions, right? A lot less lower court activity. That's not exactly accurate. There's still a ton of lower court activity, but SCOTUS is now getting to have their say on certain cases like a Swiss Army knife. So we're going to keep covering this, of course, all the politics and litigation there. But now let's talk about this trial that is brewing, because we have a bunch of stuff that is happening here in the Diddy case. Sean Diddy Combs doubling down on a strategy to win his trial. We're right in the middle of jury selection, day 2, and something new hit the docket. What is this? Oh, it's a notice of appearance from a new attorney. You see, this is fresh. We're asking ourselves, what's a new attorney coming in, skidding in here right before the trial starts? Her name is Nicole Westmoreland, and she comes out of Atlanta, Georgia, Fannyland, right next door to Big Fannie Willis, and is appearing on behalf of the defendant, Sean Combs. What is happening here? She entered her notice here, and we ask ourselves, we've got like 7 attorneys already, some of the biggest and best in the world. So what's he need another one for? Well, we're balancing the scales here in terms of race and ethnicity. We saw some stories yesterday that all of the DOJ attorneys, you can see here at the bottom of this letter, as the media has noted, are white women. Maureen Comey, Meredith Foster, Emily Johnson, Christy Slavic, Madison Smizer, and Mitzi Steiner, right? Many of these names are familiar to you. This is Maureen Comey, James Comey's daughter, who was the former director of the FBI. She also prosecuted the Ghislaine Maxwell case with help, I believe, from Mitzi and maybe more. But they submitted this letter. And so the Diddy team is very clearly working on creating the right balance of their defense team. And TMZ is reporting this, saying, Diddy is launching his new strategy, baby. I've got my second black lawyer and the feds have none. Wow. What are those white women going to do? Says Diddy has added a second black attorney to his team of legal eagles because he just hired Nicole Westmoreland to work with his 7 other lawyers, and the DOJ is not happy about these attorneys. They wrote that letter complaining to the judge about it, saying they are working to try to get him acquitted. Now, Westmoreland will work alongside another black attorney who's called Xavier Robert Donaldson, and Diddy's leading trial lawyers are Mark Agnifilo and Tenny Garagos, who are both white. Now, having 2 African-American lawyers on Diddy's legal team is an interesting move, says TMZ, considering that his camp pointed to race as a major factor in what they say is a federal takedown of a rich, successful black man, right? So the defense is going to be racism, and all these white chicks are prosecuting him. Now, Diddy's other attorneys are Brian Steele. We saw him from Fannyland, Alexandra Shapiro, Jason Driscoll, Anna Estevao. Heavy hitter Mark Garagos also set to play a major role. He's already been in a contentious background factor, and the DOJ is not happy about him. So they sent a letter into the judge complaining, there's too many lawyers. They're all just working together and they're not letting us know they're officially on the case. TMZ broke news that Diddy's legal team was on the hunt for a black female attorney, and Nicole's addition won't just be for optics. Yeah, because they were hunting for someone who could bring some real legal firepower to what's shaping up to be a seriously tough battle. Nicole's joining the squad after this guy, Anthony Rico, left. He went back in February. And so diversity back in the mix. So they're doubling down on claims of racial bias, saying Mark is straight up saying it in their documentary, saying the downfall of Diddy in his defense. So it's going to turn into a big race thing. If you're not following it, it's their defense. And it's well underway. The doc also features a mock jury that deliberates and votes and more. Diddy's facing multiple counts, 2 counts trafficking, transportation, 1 count racketeering. He's pled guilty to all charges. But that happened, of course, and the DOJ was not happy about this. All these lawyers are coming in. So they sent this into the judge today. They said, dear judge, the government respectfully writes following the first day of jury selection that we covered yesterday. In the above captioned matter, and during the course of jury selection, despite the presence of 7 defense attorneys who have filed notices of appearance in this case and a jury consultant, the defense team appeared to consult with Mark Garagos, another lawyer, and other members of the Garagos and Garagos law firm who were also present in court. Mr. Garagos and his firm have a long-standing relationship with Diddy, as we saw this filed under seal, but neither Garagos nor any members of his firm have filed a notice of appearance in this case. So they're all hanging down there behind the bar, just chatting with the other attorneys. Now, nevertheless, given Garagos' apparent role as an advisor to the defendant Diddy and his defense team, the government respectfully requests the court to remind Mr. Garagos and members of his law firm that the rules state that no lawyer or law firm associated with the defense shall give any extrajudicial statements or interviews about anything, right? So make sure they're gagged. The need for the court to admonish them is necessary because 3 days ago, Mr. Garagos spoke at length about the trial, in this case, in his podcast called Two Angry Men. On his podcast, they link it down here, the creator with Harvey Levin, the creator of a tabloid news organization called TMZ, during the podcast, Garagos opined on a variety of topics, including characterizing specific pieces of evidence in the case, describing the government's use of the hotel video surveillance as character assassination, the makeup of the prosecution team handling this case, saying that it could look like you're prosecuting a cause, rather, right? Like all these like ladies, all these white chicks, they're like prosecuting a cause. Like it's going to turn into that. It's going to be pretty funny. Yeah, it's going to be funny. Now, the arguments the defense makes intent, like it's like a bunch of like angry women who are just attacking a man because they hate men, right? That's what it's going to come down to. It's going to be beautiful to watch. And arguments the defense intends to make, noting that the defendant has a violent temper, and especially, I think, when you combine it with drugs, but that isn't what he's charged with, right? They're going to admit to a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it's assault. This is the point we made at the very beginning, at the very first indictment, we made these points. Saying, well, okay, so what? Charge him with assault. Okay, so what? Charge him with, the R. Charge him with drugs. Charge him with all these things. But RICO, why are you doing RICO? Oh, because you can't charge him with all those things because they're way too old. And like trafficking of a person for purposes of what? These are like paid models. It's like if somebody hops on an airplane to go like film an OnlyFans thing or something like that, are they indicting people under RICO charges for something? It's like not that I'm condoning any of this behavior, but like they're charging him with crimes that don't necessarily match the conduct that make up the RICO claim. So it doesn't feel, something feels off. Now in the podcast, Garagos advises listeners that he'll be back next week to discuss it further. So like, no, you won't. As the defendant Diddy has repeatedly observed in other contexts, we have to avoid creating a carnival atmosphere in high-profile cases. Yeah, right. Are you kidding me? That's why we're here. It's going to be a carnival. It's why we're here. Additionally, in seeking court intervention under the rule, Diddy has complained that lawyers for the government witnesses have commented on pretrial litigation. Yeah, and the DOJ leaks a lot too. Here for the same reasons The government respectfully requests the court remind this lawyer and their defense team of the obligations under the rules. So, signed by Maureen Comey and Team White Chicks, who are probably going on Bezos's next aircraft outer space. So they sent that in. The judge is like, what? All right, I'll deal with that. Now, there were other orders. And just briefly, before we get into jury selection, Judge Arun Subramanian, a new judge, I think took the bench in 2023, appointed by Joe Biden, brand new, probably doesn't have a lot of jury trial experience, in particular, high profile experience like this. He issued a new order today saying that the government is no longer intending to introduce certain evidence that is at issue here. And so the prior docket is denied. We had a big battle over this. They also said these other motions are also resolved. Both motions are granted and denied in part. And I pulled these up just to kind of show you how this battle looks. I don't want to spend a lot of time on them, but here was one filing from Diddy. He filed this back in April saying, please take notice that we want to preclude evidence of victim three's whatever. Victim three's cell phones, deposition, testimony, whatever. Victim three, something. All precluded. But yesterday we heard that victim three might not even be coming to testify. Okay, so one victim and the related charges that are connected to that victim might be gone already before opening statements have even started. So Diddy and his attorneys doing a good job. Motion to preclude, motion, get him out, get him out, get him out. Sign here, Mark Agnifilo, Tanny Garagos, sending that in. And now the DOJ is basically saying, we're not going to use that victim. So we don't really need to battle about those things. So these are resolved. Okay, the government is no longer going to introduce this, says the judge. So they communicated this to the judge. One victim is gone. Don't have a victim. Those charges are in trouble. So we'll see what ultimately happens on that. Maybe they can introduce the victim for other reasons. But here are the other filings. They were going to try to preclude expert testimony and from the government. So when they were going to bring in a witness, then they're going to bring in an expert. Then the government tries to preclude the expert. Then they don't bring in the witness. Then they don't need an expert. So this is all moot now. We don't need any of it. So Diddy is already winning, essentially. Like one of the key victims, victim three, is no longer relevant, is what it sounds like based on this judge's order. We're just going to rule on those things, kind of moot at this point, because they're not even going to use that material. Now, the Daily Mail had some in-court renderings on what happened, and they get some highlights for us. You can see here's some artist renderings of what is happening over there. Of course, we're going to go through jury selection day 2, hit the full X scripts, courtesy of Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press reporting. But they gave us some highlights. They said Michael B. Jordan and Mike Myers came up, and there was a funny thing that happened here. So Mike Myers in the Austin Powers video, you can see, we'll play this short clip here, but Diddy showed up in this film, which I didn't even remember, but you can see there's Goldmember, and there's Diddy on the booty right there. Sorry to put a butt cheek in your face in the middle of the stream. I basically gave you no warning about that at all, but it's right there, Diddy on the booty. So why is Mike Myers looking at what was Mike Myers' own booty with Diddy in his face? Remember from that movie? So then oh gosh, what happened? And I think the story is that Dr. Evil was actually in prison and had spent time with Diddy, had E. Diddy. Oh, it says E. Diddy. So it's E. Diddy, not like P. Diddy. It's E. Diddy. Like, what is that? Right? E. Diddy? Is that an E right there? Or what is that another symbol? Weird. Now, the scene also features Beyonce. Mike Myers was coming out on that. Today, we had 6 jurors that have made it to the next round. Diddy was nodding his head in approval the whole time. He nodded when a black female juror talked about how her sister became addicted to crack and more. Here are some more in-court renderings. And here's this other scene, other photos. So we'll go into it. Now, there's Diddy in the courthouse. And he's trying to connect with jurors. He's kind of looking at them. Yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you for being here, which is just good practice. Everybody is super nice to the jurors, and your body language has to be like overly welcoming, right? Eye contact is like amazing. Yeah, it's great to see you. You look so beautiful. Smile. Hi, welcome in. Everybody's so holding doors open, standing up at attention, honoring them, right, when they come in. And so Diddy is doing the same. Now let's go to the X scripts to see what is happening. Diddy trial, day 2, still in jury selection. Reporting coming to us courtesy of Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press presiding at the top of our timeline, so you can follow along with this trial. We're in court, Southern District of New York. Everybody's hustling and bustling. Papers are shuffling around. Things are banging around. Suddenly, door bursts open. All rise! Stand up, get up, stand up, put your phone down. Judge comes in, takes the bench and has a seat. He says, good morning, everyone. Great to see you back here. Now, let's get going. Says, to get started, everyone in the room here, all these prospective jurors, we're still picking a jury, has already filled out a questionnaire about the case. And I'm going to be asking you additional questions, and some may be about topics that are pretty difficult to discuss here. So we got your basic answers, and we read through the full questionnaire that the court provided to the jurors yesterday on day 1. But there's going to be some additional things, like based on what you answered there, we're going to have to dig in. Now, each side is going to have peremptory challenges. So once we get a nice bucket of potential jurors, each side will come out and strike some of you based on your answers and your responses to these questions. Now, you all have received a list of these questions. So what's going to happen now is you're going to be escorted out of this courtroom, and you're going to be back in courtroom 26B. You're just going to hang out there, okay? We're going to call you back in here one by one into courtroom 26A, so it'll be right next door. And then when you come in, we're going to show you a list of people and places. It's going to be in this big binder. Now, if you see or recognize anything, you just let us know, and then we'll ask you questions about that. Now, you may not be selected for your service here, but that's okay. We appreciate your time, and this has been a tremendous service, so thanks for being here, okay? Any problems? No. Anything else to address? No. Okay, so let's begin. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you. You'll be escorted right next door. And where do we want to start? Ladies and gentlemen, both sides. All right, let's start with Juror 48. Juror 48 comes in the courtroom, starts flipping through the binder. We're going to get into this pattern repeatedly. Any yes answers on that binder, Juror 48? She's a woman. She says, yeah. The crime victim question, unfortunately, there was an attempted R towards me. And I really felt like the cops could have done a lot more. I'm just glad it didn't go any further. Judge says, wow, sorry to hear about that. Where did that happen to you? In the Bronx, she says. They arrested him, but he had a fake ID. I never even got a call back. Nice work. Okay, well, I'm sorry that happened. Sounds like New York. Could you still be fair in spite of that? Well, it takes a lot of healing, she says. You have to believe in something and just give yourself grace. Like, why can't they help me? Judge says, are you in therapy for this? No, not now. I have my own way of working through it. All right. Well, on your questionnaire, ma'am, you wrote that P. Diddy has money. You said something like he could buy his way out of that. Like, what did you mean by that? Oh, I don't know. I just wrote it down. Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for your attendance here. She leaves. She's excused. Okay. Buy his way out of that. She's excused for cause. U.S. attorneys, Maureen says, that's fine. Let her go. Next juror, 61. Hello, sir. It says here your father, female. Hello, ma'am. It says here your father received some training. Can you tell me about that? Yeah, my father is faculty support for victims of sexual assault on campus in Indiana. Under Title 9 or 10? Title 9, says the judge. Has he spoke with you about it, and would it impact you? No, he hasn't. Did you hear about this case? Yeah. Where? CNN. What's your opinion on that? Well, I lean negative towards him, toward him having committed some crimes, but, I don't know if he did or not. Could you be fair? Yes, I could. All right, go back to the other courtroom. Combs' attorney, Your Honor, we move to strike that guy for cause. He says he's already got a bias. He's got to go. Judge says, yeah, I agree. He's excluded. All right, let's bring in the next one. So he's struck. Next, how about juror 88? Woman. Hi, ma'am. Any yes answers to that binder? Yes, and I am in therapy for my knees. Ugh, your knees, says the judge. You're kidding. Yeah, I'd have to ask the therapist if I could come in on a Saturday. Or maybe you could go in late at night, or you could go early. She says, well, their call. I'll go in whenever they tell me I can go. Anything else? Well, my son works in Rockland County at the executive ADA. He handles criminal cases. My son is a prosecutor. Wow. Could you be fair? Well, I thought I could, but I don't know. Well, that's because you love your son, right? And he prosecutes people. And since he's a prosecutor, wouldn't it be hard for you to find somebody innocent if your son's a prosecutor? Well, I don't know. What I say is bias may not be what you say it is. So I don't know. I can't say I wouldn't be biased, but I would try. Okay, thank you, ma'am. You can head back. Judge, I strike the juror for cause. So we're at 0 for 3 today. 3 strikes and we're rolling. Juror 101 is a male. He comes in. Your Honor, I have a question. All right. He said, well, I have 7 stents in my heart. You know, I just really can't be here. He's like, you got 7 stents in your heart? All right. Somebody get this dude a wheelchair and get him out of here. All right. Thanks for your service. Next juror is a female. She comes in. Your Honor, I can't do this. Well, I can do it, but I have had harassment training, so I'm familiar with this. And I majored in psychology. Wow, interesting background, ma'am. Could you be fair in this trial? Yes, I could. And my mother also was in a car crash, so I have been in litigation before. It was fatal. Rest in peace, Mom. We had a lawsuit, and my sister, she got into crack, and she got abused, and she later died of cancer. This poor woman. Lost everybody. Juror leaves. All right. Any applications from her to strike? Neither side objects. She's in the pool. Juror 137 is next up. Ma'am, do you know who somebody on the list? Yeah, I know a Robert Dunn from high school, but I don't know if it's the same guy because that's a pretty common name, so I'm not real sure. All right. Well, where'd you go to high school? Trinity High School. My father was a psychiatrist, and I know many people. Well, what do you do? I'm a realtor with Sotheby's, and I know a lot of lawyers too. I and my brother, we're in the surrogates court on our father's estate. We had to fight to get what the will said. You know, this is going to sound incredible, but I mean, we were in litigation for like 10 years. My father and I were on the I-95, and a rock was thrown down on us. And I saw a clip of the defendant, Diddy, by the hotel elevator in a towel, and there was a woman on the ground, and I can't recall it. I believe he's in jail in New York City or something. All right. Well, thanks for all that. Could you be fair with all this? Yes. Well, you wrote in your form that you're unsure. Well, I don't know if that video is a part of the case. I mean, I would listen to your instructions and just do what you tell me to do. All right. Thank you, sir. Defense attorney. Your Honor, we know that a closed variant of that video will be played at trial. Now, he said he wants to be fair, but doesn't sound like he can. He's already made his mind up. Prosecutor, we don't object, Your Honor. All right, he's excluded. Next, 143. Male comes in. Your Honor, you know, I read an article going home from the courthouse about the jury selection process. The judge says, what? You weren't supposed to read about the case. I told you that yesterday. He said, well, I did. I didn't go on a computer. I just read it from my phone. I didn't know it meant my phone, too. I just read who got excluded. The judge, okay. Well, my wife is a child cancer psychologist. He says, okay, where's that at? New York University, Langone. And I'm a lawyer. So the lawyer like can't follow instructions from the judge. I'm a lawyer. Well, I told you not to read the news. Well, I'm not that good of a lawyer, so I don't really know what you told me to do. So, all right. And he's like, judge, like, all right, I'm going to disbar you. So what's your license number? Because you're now done. Where? In-house at Transact with a Z. It's called Transact. I clerked in the Maryland State Attorney's Office. Sounds about right. And I was arrested for a DUI. Juror 143 says, my wife and I were also victims of ID theft and credit card theft too. When that happened? A week ago? Combs' lawyer. Your Honor, I have a question. Judge says, in a minute. How did you find the article yesterday? He says, well, I was on my phone on Metro North. I was just like looking at the news and I read about the Diddy trial. Oh, okay. So then that attorney leaves, probably went back on CNN. Prosecutor says, Your Honor, we're concerned about this guy. This juror is a trained lawyer, but he didn't obey. He literally read about jury selection to you. Told you that. Defense attorney says, well, I'm not concerned enough for a cause challenge, Your Honor. He was honest, and we object to the U.S.'s motion. So Combs wants this dude on. I don't know why or what for, but Combs wants him on. He disclosed it. He said that he said he was honest. He read it. Your Honor, he clicked it. I mean, he had to click it, like voluntarily to click it. Judge says, all right. Well, I'll strike juror 143 for cause. The lawyer is now struck. He can go back to CNN. Juror 149 comes in. It's a man. He says, Your Honor, I had a 4-week rotation into psychiatry in my medical training. I'm at Mount Sinai in surgical pathology, and I've been an expert witness in 4 or 5 cases. So I've done this many times before. So I'm familiar with it. And also my son was beaten up and he had his cell phone stolen while he was at George Washington University. Well, who beat your son up? I was told it was by 3 young black men. Would you be biased since your son got attacked and robbed by 3 young black men? He says, well, people are people. Judge says, I don't know how that means, right? Well, people are people, or you could say people are people. I don't know. I will not strike him for cause. Both sides say he's fine. So he's in the pool. Next juror comes in. He's a male. Your Honor, I said I might be elected officer in my union, but no, it's not going to happen. So my schedule changed. So I'm not going to start a new job on June 16th. But yeah, one of these questions, my wife was actually a victim of her uncle. What? By who? Her uncle. In our culture, it was swept under the rug when that happened. He says, what culture is that? He says, Puerto Rican. Mostly everyone saw the video of the defendant, Diddy, and his ex-girlfriend. Yeah, and you wrote on your form that he looked angry and hostile and entitled. Did you say that? Yeah, I did. Could you be fair? Yeah. And neither side objects, so he stays in. Incredible. Wow. 160 comes in. Do you personally know any of the people on the list, ma'am? I wish I did, but no, unfortunately, no. All these Hollywood celebrities? No, I don't. Thanks, though. I once, with my ex-boyfriend, supported him in his child support case. That's the only litigation I had. And then he left me as I was helping him fight for his children. Any questions for this woman? No. She goes, oh, well, that was easy. She's in. She leaves. Next juror comes in. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I design kitchens in Yonkers, and I get commission for that. Well, if you're here for 8 weeks, what percent of your income would be hit by that? It says 30%, I think. I could survive it. My wife is suing my landlord, so maybe she'll get some money. For what? Says the judge. Repairs. And I have friends who've been assaulted too. And one of my brothers went to jail for robbery and another one went for fraud. They're both home now, out of prison now. But on the news, I saw this trial was coming up. It's been all over the news, including this morning. It was on in my house. He says, you weren't supposed to watch the news, for the love of God. So the juror then leaves. Both sides, okay. They're like, well, that's fine. It's good enough. It's fine. He can stay in. My mother, says juror 175, new juror. She's a cancer survivor. Shout out to our cancer survivor mamas. Love you, mama. I take her to appointments at Jacoby Hospital in the Bronx. My nephew was a gang member and he shot a police officer. They dropped the charges and he's supposed to come out in July, but that's all in state court. Judge says, all right. Well, how's your English? Sometimes reading it's hard, difficult words. Well, can you sit here and read emails and my legal instructions? I think I can. At the hospital, I distribute to spot the supplies and many things are disposable. And so that juror now leaves. Government says, no, Your Honor, we want to strike that guy. Defense says, no, we think he'll be fine. The text messages in this case are in simple English. So we object to their motion to strike him. Prosecutor, come on. These texts, they're abbreviated. They're typos. He doesn't even speak English. These are hard to interpret. Judge says, I'm not going to exclude him for cause, but with peremptories, you can decide what to do. Now, we had another female juror come out. On the questionnaire says, I said I hadn't seen the defendant on TV, but I did. I saw him. And I have been traumatized before. Back in the Ivory Coast in war, it was a lot of things. So you're saying you can't be on the jury because you've been traumatized? Yes, I cannot. He says, okay, you're excused. 180 comes in. She's a female. Your Honor, we once had to evict someone from a commercial warehouse in Mexico. And also, I get stomach aches too. I'm just not 100%. I might have to take bathroom breaks. And I'm sorry, Your Honor, there's too much information, I know, but I got a sour stomach and it's just not. Judge says, well, can you sit through a movie? Like, can you, or do you have to go like in the middle of a movie? Because like, that's what we do. It's like, 90 minutes. Yes. Also, yes, I can. Also, I feel guilt. Why? Anything about in your religious beliefs that would bias you? She says, well, because I am Catholic, I think I am very tolerant. And that is true. Catholics tolerate a bunch of crap that we shouldn't. And Combs also says, the defense team, no questions, Your Honor. Prosecutor passes forward a question. The judge reads it. Oh, what was your surgery for? She says female things, and I had COVID. So, couple of issues. She's excluded. They take a break. Thank you to Inner City Press for reporting, and we're back. Next juror, female, comes in. I was a jury captain in Philadelphia 20 years ago. I've seen the Diddy video, and I found it to be quite disturbing. Okay, even though you saw it, could you be fair? Yes. She's in the pool. 184 comes in. He's a man. I'm a security guard. Where do you work? Canva. And I'm a social worker, too. Diddy's lawyer passes up a question. Judge says, well, what kind of social worker are you? I handle child neglect. Okay, and could you be fair? Yep. No objections in the pool. 194 female. Says, I work for the nonprofit called Argus. I'm a vocational counselor. With who? Mika. Well, what's that? It's called Mentally Ill Chemical Addiction Center. Oh. And you say you were the victim of a crime? Yeah, the girlfriend of my ex assaulted me. Okay. Female's girlfriend of an ex. Got it. She saw me. She was upset that he dated me. Got it. I was physically assaulted and my nose was broken. My vision in my knee. Sheesh. I filed a police report because that crazy chick attacked me. Could you be fair? Well, certain testimony about violence, I don't know. It might make me go a certain way. She leaves. The judge says, you're gone. Female comes in. 199. Hi, Your Honor. I'm a freelance worker. So if I'm not working, I'm not getting paid. All right. Well, I'm going to excuse you for cause then. 201 comes in. He's a male. I have a friend who was a detective in Florida. My son's a security guard at Mercy College, and I was on a jury in the Bronx. Could you be fair? Yep, in the pool. 204 is a female. I work for an imports company importing avocados. My uncle was in New York police. Would you be biased for law enforcement? Yeah, definitely. All right, great. You're excused. 208, female comes in. My son graduates the second week of June from high school. I heard a song about this case on a Russian comedy channel. He says, you're out. 210's a male comes in from the Bronx. Are you in court right now? Yeah, I'm evicting a tenant. Well, is there anything about the race of the defendant that would cause you not to be fair? He says, no, but I use marijuana. He says, well, can you not use it during the trial? I'm going to order that. He says, okay, fine. I'll stop smoking right now. Puts it out. Were you arrested for marijuana? Nope, comes forward. Yeah, I was in New Jersey. I paid a fine. That was it. When did you last use marijuana? He's like, last night. And I might have liked something about Diddy on X. I don't remember. Well, what have you seen in this video? I did see the video of Combs getting arrested. I might have clicked like on that, like I liked it. Combs and the defense passes a written question forward. Would not using marijuana be hard for you? He says, yes. He's like, yes. I'm jonesing for one right now. Prosecutor says, all right, excuse him, judge. The judge says, yes, he was honest, but that dude is just looking for a toke right now. Juror 210, male comes in. He says, Your Honor, as a father of 2 young children and a daughter, I'm concerned about beating women. Well, could you be fair? Yeah, I can. Well, I used to work at Credit Suisse, and now I work in collectibles. I collect baseball cards, comic books. My wife's on social media. She loves TMZ. Prosecutor sends forward a question. Judge says, well, what's the most valuable baseball card you've ever seen? That's a fun question. Honus Wagner. Honus Wagner. Woo. Has your wife spoken to you about this case? Yeah, she did. I think about a month ago. She asked me, did he do it? Did you express an opinion? He says, OMG, man, that's a big accusation. No, I don't know. It's a big one. I don't know. Did he do it? He leaves. Defense says, Your Honor, we want him out. This man has an agenda, okay? He tried to backpedal to get on the jury. He's turning to the parties and selling himself. He's trying to get on this jury. He says, yeah, judge says, yeah, I've got it. I know. He'll be struck. Laughs. Yeah, he's like selling it. No, it'll be great for you. Pick me. Now, you asked out of bias, Your Honor. He said no. You asked asked him of bias, and he said no. No, okay. Maureen, chill. He's out. 216 comes in. It's a man. Says, I work for New York City Transit Department. Says, well, you got crimes? Yeah, I was charged with assaulting a police officer. It got dismissed, though. What happened? Well, I was on the 102nd in Lexington. A police officer was bracing up on me. They searched me, and I put him in a chokehold because he, infringing on my rights. Would you be biased? And, police can get handsy. Would you be biased against the police? He says, well, I used to be. Now I know some officers. I mean, I could have complied. Then I was arrested with a gravity knife, and I had to pay a fine. Well, you ever a victim of a crime? Well, I woke up from being unconscious, and my sneakers had been stolen. So New York is wild, man. 216 says, one of my sisters said that she was AR'd in college. Another said she was abused by our stepfather. We never talked about it. She was accused of stabbing her husband. Obviously have some issues. I had to pick up her kids from the precinct. They are separated now. I wasn't there. Man, this dude has been through it. Prosecutor passes forward a question. Says, when your sneakers were stolen, did you feel the police didn't do enough? He says, yeah, at the time. Judge says, do you have issues with the police? What do you mean, issues with the police? Can you be fair, is the question. Yes. You said you learned about this case on YouTube? Shout out. Well, that's how I get my news. My man. I saw the incident by the elevator in the hotel. I don't really remember how I felt about it, and he's gone. Your Honor, we moved to strike this man for cause. He watches YouTube. He's had negative interactions with police. Defense says, we love this dude. We oppose striking him. He's grown up, okay? He gave answers that were honest and revealing. And stop and frisk was controversial back then. You don't want to be frisked up by some cops. There were 3 interactions with law enforcement. And the 2010 was also for harassing an officer. So I don't think we can really keep him if he's got harassing an officer. Defense says, well, we could redo his question, ask him about it. Prosecutor, Your Honor, no. No, he was arrested twice after his epiphany. Okay, so he was like, I learned about the cops. He got arrested twice again. He breaks the law. Your Honor, he put it in his questionnaire. He's honest about all of this. We could bring him back. So let's bring him back. He'll be great. Judge says, okay, we'll do 217 first. She comes in. No, I have no yes answers. I look nothing. Okay, that's it. You can go back. Thanks. No grounds to strike her. 216 comes back. All right, listen, man. What was that third incident? He says they was shutting down a party. The officer pushed me, and I pushed him back. So judge says, okay, well, I'm not going to strike 216. Push the cops back. So 223 comes in, says, hey, sir, you're going to need to take off your hat. He says, well, I have Crohn's disease. It attacks my bowels, and I need the bathroom once an hour. It's a big problem here. Well, we'll do 2 to 3 hours in a row. So you're not going to be able to use the bathroom for 2 to 3 hours. He says, no, I need it once an hour. 10 a.m., 11 a.m., noon. Man, that sucks. Hopefully he gets better. 227 comes in. The list, looking through it, he's a male. I don't know. A lot of names on this list. I don't know. I'm going to excuse you for cause because you can't read. Next person, male comes in. takes the witness stand. Judge says, oh, well, what book are you reading there? It's called David Sedaris. Oh, nice. Well, could you discuss sexual matters with others if you're on this case? Yeah. Defense passes forward a question, says, judge says, sir, you wrote that you understand that Combs was accused by a producer of forcing him into having intercourse. I think I heard it on NPR. He says, I don't really care for celebrity news. I'm an engineer. No objections. He's in the pool. Next woman comes in. Says, Your Honor, quite frankly, I can't speak about sex, okay? In school, a teacher brought up that thing, and I fainted. I excuse you for cause. I saw social media, says some dude. Nothing too deep. A video at the hotel, that was it. Everything in here is circumstantial. Saying the LA lifestyle is different than how I was brought up. Well, what are you saying the LA lifestyle is, says the judge. You know, fast and loose. I have a friend who worked with NetJets. I have a vacation in late June also. And I have an uncle who's a sheriff in California. What do you do for work? I'm an airline pilot. Which airline? American. Your Honor, I asked to exclude that guy. You can't unring that bell, he wrote. Well, he was just trying to be honest. I think he's fine. He said he could be fair. I'm not going to exclude him. We come back with 242. He's another male. Says, Your Honor, I'm in the middle of a personal injury case. I was assaulted in my father's house in Queens. I was assaulted by my stepmother. So I'm in a probate case over my late father's estate, fighting over money. Stepmama comes and beats him over the head. All right. You also have an merger and acquisition transaction that's going on. All right. You're excused. Too much law. Another guy, 247. Yeah, Your Honor. I definitely saw that video. I saw the elevator, but I can be fair. He's in. 252 is a male. I work at the New York City Department of Investigation. My fiance does too. We looked into bid rigging, stolen time, fraud against the city. I know a couple of people where the girlfriend stabbed the boyfriend and he died. One couple. The girlfriend was found not guilty. And I work with the Southern District of New York right now. He says, yeah, you're working with them right now? Yeah, it's a criminal fraud case. All right, we got to strike you. You got to go. Next person is a male, 257. Your Honor, my wife was a uniformed victim advocate in the Marine Corps in South Carolina, so I could be biased in favor of the alleged victim. You're gone. Next one, I have difficulty with English. You're gone. Judge says, why is this happening? Why can't anybody speak here? He says, I asked the parties to agree to set aside some jurors with issues like this. It takes us 5 minutes every time you bring in one of these people. We're running out of time. I wanted you to have time to prepare for trial. I thought you guys were going to work this out. It's ridiculous. Bring in the next one. 262. Your Honor, I worked for Diageo, and I was assaulted when I was 19. Judge says, oh my God, again, another one? Okay, I'm sorry this happened to you, but could you be on this case? He says, well, if the defense says they didn't report it, you know, I'd understand why they didn't report it because I didn't report it. So I will be biased for the victims. Like, all right, you're struck. Now we got group questions coming in. So they bring everybody back in from the morning rounds. All right, you all made it past the initial rounds. Group questions. I want to know about, give me some basic info about you, and I'll ask follow-up questions if I need to. Okay, starting with you. Juror 131, answer the questions on the board. All right, I am 65 years old. I live alone in Westchester. I am a manager of operations at Her Justice. I'm not married, no children. News, The Today Show. Essence Magazine, not really a TV person, but I do watch Chicago PD, Fire Met, and I listen to R&B. Thank you. Judge says, well, what is Her Justice? What is that? It's legal services for women. Oh, gosh. So Diddy's going to want to strike her peremptorily. Next, tell me about you. Yeah, I'm a kitchen designer. My wife is an investigator for New York City. She does homeless services and stuff. I get my news on Facebook. I like Law and Order, and I like hip hop. Diddy's like, my man. Now, juror, Another one says, well, I live with my wife, Judy Cho, and she's a physician at Mount Sinai. Dude loves his wife. He's like, she's amazing. Look her up. Another juror. I watch Ohio State football, and I like the Dave Brubeck group, and I run. It says here, your son's a lawyer? Yeah, for Mayor Brown. 157 says, well, I'm a patient billing liaison. That's what I do. My wife works at TJX. I've got a daughter who works at New Balance and a manager for the whole store. She's doing amazing. Also at Trader Joe's. Says, I watch Lester Holt. Oh, gosh. I read The Atlantic, ESPN, Knicks, Mets, Liberty. My wife watches, where did I go? There it is. Salsa, reggae. My wife watches Chicago Fire. Weekend Warrior, I shoot hoops, and more. This guy, 160, New York Presbyterian in Bronxville. My husband's a software developer. I get my news from pop-ups on my phone. I read PubMed. I watch Netflix. Don't have regular TV. R&B and hip hop, baby. And I work with teens. 201 lives in Westchester. Alone for now. Sad. I work for Central National. My son's a security guard. I turn on 1010 to get the news. Netflix, Amazing Race, woodworking, and bike riding. Cool. 41, this dude, Hell's Kitchen with my spouse. Unemployed since Thursday. Child-free by choice. Stuck in the early 2000s EMO. And Billy Joel, because I'm my grandfather's daughter. I'm scuba certified. He says, what at the WWE? He says, the bio on Steve Austin. All right. So 216 is 38 years old, lives in the Bronx, works for the MTA. Wife works in the skin cancer department. Kids 2, 10, and 12. Gets the news from YouTube. I read Men's Health, hip hop, reggaeton, bachata, and salsa. He says, I was at Jewish school for the blind. No children. I watch CBS, ABC, and I like classical music. Juror 184 is 39. Lives in the Bronx with his brother. Works for Jewish Child Care Association. No kids. News from YouTube. Sports on FS1. Afrobeat music. 183 lives with his wife. Con Ed, no children, completed one course at Temple, shops on Amazon, watches Housewives and basketball, house music, some gospel, and more. 163 lives in the Bronx, works at a hospital. 255 is 87. She lives in Manhattan alone, retired. I work for Navy Ship Repair in San Diego. My daughter worked at United, another with Molson Coors, and Condé Nast. 230 is 57, is an architect, reads The Athletic, likes Severance, good show, and likes rock alternative. 240 is 45, lives in Manhattan, pilot for American Airline, lives on YouTube, Reddit, Disney+, fly and instructs, and is part of the Manhattan Flight Club. 40 years old, living in Manhattan, expertise is oncology, reads The New Yorker, watches HBO, and the lawyers are called up. Let me see the lawyers at the sidebar, says the judge. Jurors say, a judge says, jurors, you're finished today. Thank you for being here. Do not read anything about the case or post anything about it. Prosecutor, Your Honor, we propose not bringing back 5 more jurors. Here's what we propose. The defense says, we agree 282, 289, and 304. And we propose strikes on 1 and 2. We propose strikes 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, adjourn. And so that's what they've got there for us, courtesy of Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press, reporting, giving us the latest details on the jury. And so let's see if the Daily Mail has any finality on any numbers or any updates. But as we see, jury selection looks like it's still continuing on. And we'll be here covering it. So it's a slog to get through the jury selection, but we're getting a taste of what the jury feels like. And we're going to see some additional filings, no doubt about it, as the days count down until opening arguments. So we'll be here covering it. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends. Now, if you're just joining us here, we had a great stream today. 2 main segments. One talking about this order that came down from the Supreme Court of the United States, granting Trump's request. A stay is granted. The lower level judge who said that Trump's ban on the trans is invalid, has been reversed temporarily. So the case will still progress through the appeals court. And at the conclusion, we'll see where it ends up. But for now, the Supreme Court is hinting that trans are not allowed in the DOD if Hegseth and Trump say so. So Hegseth is celebrating that, President Trump celebrating that, and all of the lefties who made this their cause du jour are having a rough day today. We talked about it. Then we turned our attention to Diddy. We learned about Diddy's new trial strategy, saying he's got a second lawyer who's coming in to join the team, and it's another black lawyer, and the feds have none, and they're going to make race a key component of their defense. So that trial is starting on Monday with opening arguments, and as it stands, we've got some jurors being selected. The prosecution not happy about Diddy's 7, now 8 lawyers who are crashing in there to defend the guy, but it should be an interesting case. And so we're laying some good foundation here. We'll see what happens next week when it gets started. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done that. Thanks for inviting a friend or family member to come over here and join us when we go live, because it is much better when we do it together. All right. And let's see who's here and joining us. We had, oh yeah, this morning on the member stream, we were talking about breasts too. How'd that come up? What was that all about? Was that this morning? Where are we right now? All right, so your boy is here. Yeah, can the case be about women breastfeeding babies? Oh yeah, because there was the breastfeeding, I think, example that we talked about. Thank you for sending that one in, Rob White. Here we are starting the day, and you know what today is? It is Toupee Tuesday. And you know how we're going to be celebrating Toupee Tuesday? With this fella right here, Shri, and his toupee blasting off into high and outer space. You can see, there it is. I didn't know what was on his head this whole time. It's a little squirrel. How adorable. All right, what's up? Milo Phone Bill says the University of Washington rioters dressed in Antifa black bloc garb occupied a building last night, have already been released. I have to wonder who paid their $1,000 bail. Was it Kamala? Could be. That's over from the Hoff father on X. Milo says, one of the people arrested at last night's occupation is a defense attorney. I would think he or she knows better than to get involved in something like this. How will this affect their career? Well, I mean, they're likely going to have to report it to the bar. They've been charged with a felony, if it's a felony charge, or, you know, they'll have to comply with the state bar. Where is it? Washington State. They'll probably get a promotion. They'll maybe be running for attorney general there. Career will probably go up. What's going on? Hey, this one came out from Petroleum Dynamite. Oh, man. This is a baby oil meme, because I think that's a key ingredient in baby oil, you know, the lubricant. Oh, gosh, the memes. Steel Manning. What are the odds they slip in a charge for Tupac and we can finally get some justice for his death? Not good on that, Steel Manning, but it would be a very interesting development in this case. I was trying to drop a Tupac line, but the only one I can think of is very vulgar. Yeah, so we'll skip it. But thank you for that, Steel Manning. 300-yard wink is here. Says 12 months as a membo. Happy anniversary to all of us here. 1 year, 300-yard wink. I'm certain that all Diddy's laws are eyes for is money and the media. Are looking for is money and the media. Well, I don't know exactly where you're going with that 300-yard wink. All of his lawyers are looking for is money and media attention. Money and I think I got that. So his lawyers, no doubt. Yeah, they're going to be getting a lot of attention in this trial. Jennifer O'Connell. What's up, Jennifer O'Connell? Says can't have biological medical conditions in the military, but elective lifetime medical patients are required to be accepted. Yes, that's right. And if you don't make a special exception for them, then you're a racist and you're violating their due process, their free speech rights, their free association rights, and all of the other laws that exist in the world. They need to be held to strict scrutiny standards and be treated as a quasi or suspect class. That's their position. Not happening. Thank you, G-Men. Says, Tillis is my senator, unfortunately, from North Carolina. You should run against him, G-Men. It doesn't look like anybody has the money to primary him, and certainly nobody has the name notoriety to beat Roy Cooper D in the general election. Lord help everyone if Cooper wins. He is not declared yet, but he is certainly running. So shout out to our friends in North Carolina. Tom Tillis should just do the right thing and just confirm Ed Martin. I don't know what he's doing. He confirmed Merrick Garland, for crying out loud. One of the worst people to exist in our government in modern American history. So what's his screeching about over Ed Martin? January 6th? Give me a break. Relantel, what's up, Relantel? Thanks for bringing in 5 new membos. What's going on? We got Rafael Valenzuela's here. Confessions of a Cookie Addict. Gentle Eyes, welcome. Matt Albrecht is here. And Pre-Pro Tuck in the house, courtesy of Relantel. Gifting 5 new membos in the house. Hey, G-Men. Yeah, a lot of these trans operations, addictomy, tropidectomy, lopidectomy, different variations of the same operation, but it's pretty heinous. Good to see you, G-Men. Hey, Doan, the woke got axed and recruitment's through the roof. Yeah, it certainly looks that way. And of course, they're trying to undo all of that. But the Supreme Court said no. Thank you, Don't. What's up? Wellington Gomez. Good to see you, Wellington. Thank you for the nice dono, Wellington. Appreciate you being here and becoming a supporter. Great to have you. See you tomorrow on the members only stream in the morning. Philip Coggins. How can you expect me to follow someone into battle where I may lose my life if they can't figure out what bathroom to use? Yeah. It's a complicated dynamic. You kind of want people to have that stuff figured out. Got to get the fundamentals in place before you wage battle that may result in life and death. Thank you for that, Philip. Steel Manning, if I don't get absolutely everything my way and 100% affirmation, we slide. Exactly the kind of mindset we need on the front lines of war. We slide. Well, that's exactly right. They want everything everywhere all at once without any repercussions considered for anyone else other than them, because the Constitution says so and they deserve it. Thank you, Steel Manning. FD Man on Rumble says trans women have uteri. Is that the plural of uteruses? That are naturally external, and their ovaries are in external sacs, which are called their nuts. Sticks and berries, oh, behave, baby. Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's true. They're outside. They're just in a little sack out there. Hey, Clark, what's up? Clark Blount. Imagine having to get a special ID because of a crisis the government created, or be denied your travel rights. Yeah, under the real ID thing. Is that what you're unhappy about, Clark? Yeah. They're rolling out stuff pretty quickly. Like, they're like, nope, it's real ID time. Nope, pay your student loans. Like, it's time. Like, dad's home. Get your stuff done. Yeah. Well, hopefully you got your real ID, Clark. And if not, hopefully you can get it quickly. Londo, hysteria, Rob. The plural is hysteria for uterus. I learned that watching the O.J. Simpson trial. Did that come out in that one? Is that right? Hey, Food and Sleep. Welcome aboard. Thank you, Food and Sleep, for joining us. 2 very important things. Jeffrey Adams, gender dysmorphia slip is actually a better name than gender dysphasia. Yeah, it's gender. I've heard all 3. And then we had gender dysphoria, gender dysmorphia, dysphasia. What are the different meanings? Does it matter? Doan, what's up? Says healthcare will be the ultimate master narrative. Healthcare. Well, it's like 1/3 of our GDP, isn't it? I mean, it's ridiculous. So I think you're saying healthcare will be their narrative. Healthcare is everybody's narrative. It's abortion. It's everything. It's all healthcare. What's up, FD man? All this trans stuff is sick. Why are we talking about this sick stuff? They need a head doctor. Well, it's because it's the Supreme Court. That's why. Not a good idea to send broken people into battle. Says, I came in the military in 1992, got out in 2011. The road was being paved for all this BS since Clinton. War happened, and it was kicked to the back burner till Obama came in. Zombie Joe went hog wild, and now look at all this sick stuff. Yeah, it is sick. That's true. Former LEO, I have the perfect solution for the privacy issues regarding the Doge examination of Social Security, says former LEO. Have an individual submit a request to have the information protected, which would trigger removal from the database. The removal would trigger additional removal from all databases, including payroll. This end result would be a resignation from the government. Looks like a win-win to me. Kind of like self-service deletion from the government. FD Man says, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and the last thing I want is a grown man with a mental illness making him think he is a woman in the same restroom with my little girl. That is the problem. Yeah, man. I don't have a 10-year-old daughter, but I could imagine the emotion you're feeling, even writing that message. I understand. I don't exactly understand because I don't think you can until you're there, but yeah. Sheila Poo, it's about time SCOTUS made a reasonable decision. It's nice to see them. John Roberts woke up today. FD Man says, Mike, pull on the purse strings. You have a lot of power. Just push the impeachment articles through committee and make them urinate in their pantalones. Talking specifically to Mike Johnson. Did you hear him, Mike? Hey, what's up, TQ Smith? Thank you for becoming a member. Great to have you, TQ Smith. We'll see you tomorrow morning. And grab the stream from this morning. It was fun. It was a good one. FD Man says, wow, all white women on the prosecution's team. I know. I wonder if P. Diddy will use this white, cool, cute cats. I don't even know what that is, but we'll just fast forward. Thank you, FD Man, for the dono. Lex Rex, isn't removing a judge a lot easier than impeaching a judge? So I think you're talking about removal based on good behavior kind of a situation, which is not what anybody's contemplating, right? Johnson was talking about impeachment, not removal via resolution. How come the speaker did not mention removal, which only requires a majority in the House and in the Senate? Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably because he doesn't want to do that. It's like less of a common thing that has been done. So he doesn't want to test a new novel concept. Hey, Jason, Clean Safe Energy says, to let you know, your YouTube stream has been cutting off for the first couple of minutes every day for the last couple of weeks. I miss your opening every day. On the Membo streams or on this stream too? Thank you, Jason, for the feedback. I got to look into it, man, because I'm not seeing it and I'm having a hard time diagnosing it. So I feel like it was just on the member stream, and that might be because you're not logged in appropriately. But did it happen today? Thank you, Jason. That's frustrating. I'm sorry it's happening. I'm not happy about it. Kitchen Mortician, get him to the Greek. It's now real life. 14 months as a membo. It is now real life. And it's happening on both streams. Yeah, me too on both streams. It's on both streams. All right. What's up? Thank you for that. Maybe it's a StreamYard thing, but I don't know why that would be doing that. Anyways, hey, Kim Jong-un, North Korea is best Korea. Hello, Rob. You number one to me. Wow. Kim Jong-un sent in a super chat from North Korea, the best Korea. It is on both streams. All right. Gonna have to go beat something. Thank you, Kim Jong-un. Hello to you. What's up, Rick Donner? What's up, Rick D? Says Newark mayor tries to shut down an ICE detention center in his city, claiming it doesn't have a permit to operate. Unreal. Well, we'll see what that looks like. Hopefully Tom Homan is aware of that. Sheila Poo says, wow, these jurors are the cream of the crop, aren't they? Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting one. Juror after juror. And even the judge was like, what the hell is going on here? Where do these people come from? Funny, Sheila. Thank you for the donos today. Hey, Pinochet's helicopter tour says, Robert, question. Swim gets called for jury duty. If they state ahead of time to either the jury duty office or the judge that they will rule against the government, would they face consequences? Swim? I'm not sure what that acronym stands for, but if somebody comes in and just I mean, like they would just be generally precluded from the jury, right? Just like we saw today. No, I can't do this. I can't talk about this. So they would just be precluded. unless I'm misunderstanding what swim means. But thank you for the dono, Pinochet. This old guy says, wow, 97.3% of potential jurors in the New York hate police or committed crimes. Single white immature male, is that what that means? I don't know what that means. Says, of the potential jurors in the New York hate police, is that right, Ron Jones? It sounds good. I don't know. If a single white immature male gets called to jury duty, then they'll probably arrest him for being white on jury duty. I don't know. It sounds good. Hey, this old guy says, wow, 97.3% of the potential jurors in New York hate police or committed crimes or fought with police or are drug users or are just plain stupid. Finding a jury is a trip. Yeah. FD man says no English is because of sanctuary cities like NYC giving away DL driver's licenses, not to mention the refusal of some not wanting to be assimilated to New York into US society. Yeah, and I think the long story short there is to just kind of reshape the demographics of the country and to build themselves reliant constituencies that will continue to elect them and ensconce them in power. What's up, Nisa in the house? Great to see you, Nisa. Thanks for joining up. We'll see you on the Membo stream tomorrow, and grab the one from this morning. It was great. Doan says Diddy's people places list is a mile long. Judge said it was like reading an appendix from the Lord of the Rings. We saw that yesterday, Doan. Yeah. Oh, Judge. That's fun. Yeah, clever. I'm sure it's very long. The dude has been around, like he's been an icon for, rap music for 40 years. Philip Coggins. What's up, Philip? Says Steel Manning could probably add a charge for Biggie too. Tupac and Biggie. Do you think Diddy's responsible for both of those? G-Man says, dude, I would love to run against him, but that's not going to happen. LOL. I've been considering getting into politics, though. I probably need to start more local with the state legislature. Man, that would be great. Yeah. I think we need more good people running. I think most of it starts locally anyways. And even just volunteering for your local Republican Party, whatever they're doing, even like city council, stuff like that, right? Maybe not even state, like what's your city council doing if you're in a small town? Winter, what's up? Hey, thanks, Rob. You've been making me laugh a lot lately. I appreciate your jokes. Well, I can't take any credit for it, Winter. It's just we're living in comedy land where things are hilarious. Thank you, Winter, for being a membo, supporting us over on Locals. We appreciate you. Londo, the 7 Knights of SCOTUS need a head doctor. More head doctors on the Supreme Court. G-Men says, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and there's one of those at the Irish pub we go to eat at. He goes into the women's room every time. Now, every time she goes in, I stand outside the door. If he makes an attempt, he will never end up inside that bathroom with her. Yeah. Thank you, G-Men, for that. You're a good father. Londo says, the new user interface is broken. I switched back to the old UI. Glad you're liking the old one, Londo. Hopefully they get it fixed. Pinochet says someone swims is not some. What did Ron Jones say? It was pretty good. It was a pretty good acronym. Something about white men. Here's one. Someone who isn't me. Okay, so let's back up. If they stayed ahead of time to jury duty officer or the judge that they'll rule against the government, would they face consequences? I mean, the judge would just exclude them and dismiss, okay. What just happened? It says, okay, if you're going, if the judge would have come out and said, you say to the judge, I'm specifically going to rule against someone, then he would say, it basically came up today. So you're going to be, I would be biased towards the victims. I think I would believe the victims. Okay, well then you're going to go. If you came out and said, I will rule against Diddy because I don't like him or for whatever reason, they would just preclude you just for not being fair. The judge isn't going to, punish you generally for that. Winter, what's up? Here's this one. Says, life is short. Vote out a politician. Winter says, but seriously, don't, no physical violence in any way, shape, or form, but we often talk with political rhetoric, and we want to be aggressive in voting politicians out. G-Men says, I am volunteering for city council so I can learn. Amazing. I think city council's pretty cool. I've been kind of paying closer attention. I moved to Prescott, so it's kind of a smaller town. And, city council is important. Like they have some big decisions and have some big impact, like on you directly. So I think it's awesome, G-Men. Good to hear that. And thank you for sending those donos in, my friends. Very much appreciate all of those coming in. Thank you for supporting our work here. Chubby, thanks for giving me the details on the technical problems. My friends, let's say hello on X on the chat. See who's joining us over on X. What's up, Mini Tika? Great to see you. George is over there. Says, yeah, intro problems. What's up? Samantha Richardson says, we need to make sure our senators are pushing to vote Ed Martin to make sure he's an attorney. John Cobb, great to see you. Generic is over there with a couple of posts. And Mini Tika, thanks for sending that one in. Samantha Richardson, great to see you as well. So great to see everybody on X. Thanks for dropping those comments and sending those in. We also got more, of course, coming back tomorrow. So we're going to leave it there on the day, my friends. But really, thank you for sending those in. Thanks for all of your contributions to the work that we do. Couldn't do it without you. We will pause there for the evening. We're going to go over to locals and hang out for a little bit. But before we do, we want to thank our mods and our meme smiths. K Bean in the house. Donut Mind Me. We got Carrie B, Playing Hooky, Dog Digger, and Jan Eck modding the fort down for us, keeping things oh so nice and beautiful and orderly around here. And we're very grateful for them and for you. That is where we'll pause here on the day. Locals, friends, stick around. We'll hang out for a few minutes and wrap things up. Otherwise, members, we're back here tomorrow morning, 12 noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific. We'll have some other great segments that we'll get into. We'll have other segments from this morning's, including the John Roberts lawsuit segment, sued by America First Legal, will be coming out later. And so keep your eyes out for those if you're interested in those. But that, my friends, is going to be it for us on the day. We are coming back here tomorrow. We'll be getting back into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.